Hello, everybody. Hi, how are you doing? I'm a bit late. So, we are here tonight for three more chapters of my fanfiction about Harry's adulthood, about Harry. Probably you all know by now. And yeah, probably I should do my usual disclaimer. So, characters in this book are not mine. I didn't invent them. They are covered by a copyright, and I don't make any money out of it whatsoever. I just use them to entertain myself and others. So, that being done, oh, hi, Nectar. That being done, I guess we can just. Hello, Irene. Hi. I guess that being done, we can just recap a little bit of what happened in the last chapters, just to refresh our mind. And yeah, so basically, Ginny kind of is trying to convince Harry to let Ron out of Azkaban using his remorse, which is totally all right. I think she's doing the right thing. And yeah, today we are kind of find out uh, how it's gonna go. So, oh yeah, I should mention this. I always forget it. But all these chapters are downloadable on my website, which is www.scribblingaloud.wordpress.com. Anyway, the website is in the description if you want to have a look at it. And yeah, basically after a few hours, usually the next day, I upload them there, and you can download them for free if you just want to read them without listening to me, which is totally fine. So yeah, and now I guess we can start with chapter 19, which is called Asking Favors. The following day had been a full one for Harry. He visited house after house of the most important wizard in the Wizard Gamut to plead Ron's cause. He started with the Minister of Magic, Harold Browning, a corpulent middle-aged man. He was also he was always even too friendly with Harry, inviting him for dinner much more often than he would have liked to. He tried to excuse himself most of the time, but it was a drudgery he had to endure at least once a month. He wasn't a bad person, really, but Harry knew that it wasn't because of the pleasure of his company that he was invited, but because of the image he wanted to give of himself and the ministry. An old story. He didn't even dream to invite the other heads of department. He was just him that had this unwanted privilege. He always felt used after every meeting. He was very aware that the minister, like everybody else, was really careful to show to the magical community that they had a good relationship with him and that Harry supported him and the whole ministry. They were very well aware how important it was to be in Harry Potter's good book to be popular with people. That obviously gave him a lot of power. He could have become Minister of Magic any time if only he would have wanted to. But he didn't want to. He was busy enough as it was with his job, and he didn't look for more responsibilities. He never used the privileges he knew he could have. He felt it wrong and unfair toward his other colleagues. He always tried to keep at a minimum his friendliness with the minister, adopting the same interactions any other employee would have had with him. When he was young and had the opportunity to become an hour, he was overjoyed, although he insisted in following all training and tests required by the other candidates. Many were willing to close an eye on him following the usual path. He had been unmovable, however. He wanted to get that position for merit. He had been wise. He admitted it now. Already as he was, there were many people contesting his job and position, but they couldn't do more than scowl and talk behind his back, having him passed with very good results every test submitted to him. He had been skeptical, however, at first to be part of the ministry. He didn't like the line of conduct towards him throughout the years, and he still had the mark on his hand, a very peculiar scar that had created difficulties when the kids had asked him how he got it, reminding him this. In the end, he had decided to silence his doubts because of the love for the job, and still now he was overlooking many things he wouldn't normally have accepted, like the use of him to advertise the operate of the ministry. He always tried to stay in the shadow, but he was always brought forward for everything. It is not he didn't approve of the minister or his operate that on the whole he thought it was quite sensible. He just didn't want to be used to prove the point. Because of his position, every wizard he visited that day welcomed him very cordially, and all of them listened to him carefully and made promises to do what they could do to solve the matter. Obviously, for something in exchange. Probably, he could have just forced them to do what he wished, but he didn't want to destroy the frail balance of powers in the ministry. He had to refuse many invitations for dinner and bear many empty words of condolence he would have gladly dispensed with. He had to shake hands, nod, and answer questions, managing to say nothing while speaking. He tried to be as detached as possible to the wall of it, but, nevertheless, it took him almost the entire day to speak with the most influent people. At the end of it, he was exhausted in spirit. He hated this with all his soul. He was getting profit of his name to ask favors. Despicable. Especially considering he asked for something that, in reality, he didn't want. However, there wasn't any choice. Ginny had told him that as soon as Ron had been imprisoned in Azkaban, he had tried to commit suicide, hanging himself. Only by sheer luck he had been saved. A guard was sent to his cell to take him to meet Hermione, and had found him hanging from the window bar. He had shredded his bed linen to make a rope. Hermione had reasoned with him. She had reminded him that he was a father, that his children needed him. She had made him swear not to do it again, but she was living in fear. Harry had promised he would do his best. He would have done anything Ginny asked him anyway. He wanted to make amends for his behavior toward her. And he didn't want Hermione, Rose, and Hugo to suffer as they were suffering. When he got home, Ginny was waiting in agitation. How did it go? He shrugged his shoulders and slouched on the sofa beside her. We must get tickets for the next Shadley Cannons match for the head of the committee, that Kirsby guy and his family. And most unfortunately, we have to watch the game with them. I must go to get a drink with Nortons at the Hogsmeade sometimes next month, and you are well aware how I detest the man. We must go to have dinner with the minister in a public place, and I don't even know what else, he said tiringly. But I think he will be out by the next week. She brightened and hugged him. I knew it. Thank you. I know how much it costed you, and I appreciate it very much. This is the last time I'm doing something of the kind. You have no idea what it has been, he said, fatigued. I do have an idea, but at least it's going to be out, and we can try to have a normal life again. He sat up on the sofa, suspicious. What do you mean normal? Well, like he used to be, she answered hesitantly. Jenny, perhaps you don't understand. I've done what I've done for you because you asked me to, and because of Hermione and the children. But I haven't changed my mind toward him, he said sternly. I'm going to pick it up when they let him out to clarify this, but it's going to be the last time we meet. He's as good as dead to me. But, Harry, she said, pleading, it was an accident. I don't care. I don't want to see him again. I don't mind if you do. He's your brother, and I understand. But to me, from now on, he is nothing. This that happened cannot be deleted. It cannot be as it was before. She looked very miserable in hearing this, And Harry was sorry for it, but he was inflexible. He didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. Their friendship was at an end. It never really helped Ron's ego, always feeling in competition with him. The only reason why he wanted to avoid him committing suicide was to spare the distress it would have caused in his family. He couldn't forget that because of his stupidity, Lily was no more. But he's my family. He's going to be at every family gathering. Hermione's your friend. The kids are cousins, friends. You cannot keep them apart. She was bleeding, panic stricken. Ginny, you can keep on living as before if you manage to. I won't. I can't. He can do whatever he prefers, going wherever he wants to, but I won't be there if he's present. I step aside. I don't care. I'm not planning to keep anybody as under. Just myself. Rose and Hugo can come here whenever they want to. Hermione too, but I don't want to see him again. There was finality in his words. They silenced her for a while. Perhaps you will change your mind eventually, she added, almost in supplication. Perhaps, he said. When I forget Lily, I will, he added flatly and hardened. Lily wouldn't wanted this. She loved Ron, she said, almost whispering. Maybe she didn't. I agree. But thanks to him, we will never know for sure, won't we? And saying this, he left the room, unwilling to prolong the conversation any longer. This was the end of chapter 19. So, yeah, well, Ginny kind of kid himself that everything can be as before, and Harry is a bit more rational here. I think. So, yeah, I guess we can carry on with chapter 20, which is letters of condolences. The following day, Harry decided to go to the office, despite Ginny wanting him to stay home to talk. They still hadn't decided what to do in respect to James and Albus. He was very tempted. Not much about the talking, it was always a motive of deep distress, but it would have been nice to stay at home with her, consoling each other. Although he had left something unfinished and he wanted everything to be in order, as he was planning not to return for the next few days. He took the lift, and when he got to his floor, he found Elizabeth there. Hello, Elizabeth. What are you doing here? Is it not Christmas holidays yet? Is it not Christmas holidays yet? He asked in surprise. It is, but I thought you might come here and you could do with some help, she said brightly. How did you know I would have come here? She looked at him with meaning. 5 years ago, I lost my husband. I worked a month straight, morning to evening, without interruption. It was her way to acknowledge what happened and to sympathize. It was done with tact. He liked her for it. She was a very motherly and protective kind of person that had always treated Harry almost like a son, and even more important, in Harry's opinion, without the fuss usually connected to his person. Oh, yes, he mumbled, averting her eyes. You are kind, and I appreciate it, but I won't stay long, and I'm not going to return again for a few days. So you will need to come. I must spend time with my family. Of course, she said smilingly. You will hug Ginny from me, won't you? He nodded. She slid on the desk toward him a big box. I sorted your correspondence. What was work related is on your desk. The rest is here. He was bewildered. The rest? What do you mean? Condolences? I guess, she answered, matter of fact. But from whom? He asked, still uncomprehending. From people, she said, astounded. Harry, dear, didn't you read the newspaper in the last few days? She asked in an affectionate tone. No. Why? He was still looking at the box in amazement. There must have been at least 100 letters inside it, maybe more. She spread on the desk 3 daily prophets and some magazines. You have been on it since Christmas. Harry's amazement grew. In front of the 25th of December Daily Prophet Special Edition, there was a picture of him and Ginny walking in a park. In the middle of them, a smiling Lily, keeping Harry's hand, was waving to whoever was taking the picture. The title was Tragedy Struck Again in Harry's Life. He slipped this one quickly behind all the others, not to have to see the photo, his heart skipping a beat. The 26th, a picture of Shell Cottage garden, focusing on the blood over the snow, making it look like a bloodshed had been perpetuated. Nobody leaves interview. Do they have something to hide? Last one, a picture of Ron, all disheveled, gesticulating in front of the Wizzagamot. Harry Potter's best friend, a murderer? He darkened straight away. What's this rubbish? He said, perusing them quickly. Apparently, journalists had tried to get information from everybody about Lily's death, but he didn't manage. Only Ron's questioning was reported. The news of his attempted suicide hadn't leaked, apparently. He stated what happened, but refused flatly to explain the reason of their dispute. Harry was relieved and thankful for this. His life was public enough as it was. He could have made it so much worse just revealing what had passed between them. Unfortunately, this mystery had unleashed the journalist's fantasies. They wrote the most absurd things on it. He was speechless with outrage. I wouldn't take it personally if I were you, Elizabeth said kindly. Can I borrow them? He asked, and with those and the box, he headed straight home to show Ginny. Already home? She asked, seeing him back so soon. She was drinking a tea in her nightshirt at the kitchen table. He slammed the newspaper on the table. Did you know about this? She took the papers and perused them slowly. I didn't read them, but I know people have been to my parents' house and to all my brothers trying to collect facts. Motherfuckers! Did they come here? He asked enraged. She raised an eyebrow, not approving the use of these colorful terms. You know very well they can't. The house was protected by a Fidelius charm. Only family members and very close friends knew the address. It was a necessary precaution to guarantee them a normal life because of Harry's situation. It was annoying in many respects. The children couldn't invite their friends over. Neither they could get anything by correspondence, not even letters or newspaper. Before this decision, they had to move continually. People, especially at the beginning, were lurking outside their place or knocked at their door with excuses just to pray. Owls were delivering messages all day long. It was a nightmare. For that reason, it was impossible for journalists to call on them and people couldn't write to them. But he just wanted to make sure everything was working as it should. What did they ask them? Why is Percy not putting a stop to this sodding rubbish? How did they dare go in there asking questions? He asked, pacing up and down the kitchen. Harry, calm down. It is nasty, but I wouldn't have expected anything else. Percy cannot stop journalists, if this is what you want to call them, and neither is the only one deciding what is going to be published or not, as you are well aware. Actually, I'm sure it could have been much worse if he wasn't there. Journalists have been to the barrow to ask questions, but nobody talked to them. George actually threatened to curse him. I think we can expect an article on the jock shop very soon, she said unconcernedly. I don't know why you care. Are you not used to it by now? What's that box? Harry explained, sitting motionlessly on a chair, still greatly enraged. People really have neither shame nor decency, and I don't want to read those. Pointing at the letters Ginny was piling on the table, ready to be opened. You can throw them directly into the fire. There is enough to keep us warm for the rest of the winter, he muttered darkly. She opened the fourth one. Condolences, she said, putting it aside. This one too, piling it with the other. Same with the third one. She stopped short at the fourth and almost choked with the tea she was drinking. She scolded at Harry like it was his fault to whatever was written in it and chucked it straight into the fire. She resumed her place primly. You get very interesting correspondence. I just got advertisement. Her expression stony. I didn't ask people to write. Didn't I tell you that you can throw them straight to the fire? Hissed impatiently. But she was carry on with her reading and brightened at the next one. Ooh, this one says that the real reason you had an argument with Ron is that he found out that you killed you know who just to take over the ministry, and they are all imperious by you. She sipped her tea in reflection. Interesting theory, which doesn't explain why they paid you such a pittance at the beginning. But anyway, I'll show it to Luna the next time we meet her. She might find it interesting. And pocket it. Harry was getting very annoyed by her unconcern in front of something that enraged him so much. Since you are not taking this seriously, I'm going to have a run, he declared, almost challenging. She nodded, going on reading and enjoying her tea. The fifth essence of indifference. Fine. A few minutes later, he was out in the open air. Harry loved to run, and he did it almost every day, either in the morning before work or in the evening. It helped him relax. Scarcely any witch or wizard did any sport outside in London, which gave him a chance to be alone and unbothered with his own thoughts. Lily's death had so disrupted his life that all his habits, that one included, had been forgotten for the last few days. He was also a bit hesitant to start again. Thinking was painful, and running was a moment for reflection, a moment to confront himself. Muggles would usually listen to music while running, but he didn't like it. Although, that day, it would have been better to have some music to listen to instead of his own thoughts. He got in Regent's Park, his favorite place to exercise. The little snow which had fallen had crystallized on the trees and on the ground, making the park glitter under the pallid rays of sun. He was still feeling outrage against people that felt authorized to pry in such a moment. Why was it considered acceptable for the magical community to intrude in his sorrow? Why couldn't they print a single newspaper without mentioning him at least once somewhere? How long did people need to forget about Harry Potter? They will never forget. It will be like this forever. It will be the same for my children. These unhappy reflections swapped his anger with dejection. It was a continuous up and down of emotions: anger, dejection, outrage, sorrow. He was wearing him in deeply. He thought about Lily's room. They had to deal with that too, together with the James and Albus situation. And he had to go to Azkaban to speak to Ron. A sickness of heart took possession of him. He could see just painful tasks and hard times ahead. Not even a tiny ray of sun to look forward to. He couldn't see how it could be. Not happy, but at least serene again. A sense of uneasiness was following him like a shadow. It was odd to think that a big part of his happiness had derived from such a tiny little being as Lily. Harry, of course, knew that he loved her very much, but he never really stopped to reflect how much of his happiness was linked to having her around. Moreover, Lily's absence was precluding him to be glad for what he still had. He should feel glad about Ginny loving him and about the boys growing and learning so fast. But he just couldn't resuscitate that emotion. He was buried under layers and layers of bad feelings. He got home, more dejected than ever, only desiring to go to bed and sleep. Ginny had finished reading all the letters, and they were now burning in the fireplace. Harry took a shower and lied in bed with his hair still wet, closing his eyes. He heard her getting inside the room, posing, looking at him. It was 11 a.m., not the usual time to go to bed. She slipped close and put an arm around him. You got two owls, she said softly. He didn't answer straight away, overwhelmed by dreariness. Ginny, I promise you that tomorrow I will deal with what I have to deal. But for today, I just want to sleep. She kissed his bare shoulder. One is from the ministry. He groaned, annoyed, and opened his eyes. Give it to me. He took the letters from her hand. The second one was from Hermione. He opened the ministry first. It was only a few lines to inform him that in an hour time there would have been an extraordinary hearing for Ron's case. His presence was required. He gave it to Ginny to read. Hermione's one was as follows. Dear Harry, I write without knowing what to put on paper. I can only imagine how you feel and how difficult it must be for you. I have no words to offer that can alleviate the sorrow. I won't even try not to pain you with commonplaces. You know very well how we all feel and how we love there. Hugo is in shock. He barely speaks. He worries me very much. I must trouble you as well with thanks. I've known you for many years, and because of that, I'm very impressed of what you are doing for Ron. I know what it must cost you, and I appreciate it even more. Rose is crying every day thinking about him in prison, and I didn't know what to do any longer. Thank you. Ginny told me you don't want to see him again. I understand. I would like you to change your mind, but I know at present it's impossible. This morning, I heard about the extraordinary hearing. I will be there too. Love, Hermione. He passed this one to Ginny, sighing. I'll be down in half an hour. And that was the end of chapter 20. Nectar, I'm sorry, but Valentina are waiting for me. I have to go. Don't worry. Bye bye, Nectar. Thank you to have been here. Okay, so I guess we can go with the last chapter for the evening, which is very short. Tonight we kind of have two very short chapters, so it took us barely half an hour to read them. Okay, so I guess I'm gonna start. So, chapter 21, The Hearing. At 10 to 12, he threw some flue powder in the fireplace. Ministry of Magic, he shouted, and in a second, he was there. Hermione was waiting for him close to the entrance. She didn't speak. Her eyes wet, she just hugged him tightly. When she released him, he took her hand firmly. Come on, or we'll be late, he told her. They walked in silence in the hall, hand in hand. The ministry was more desert. I'm sorry. The ministry was more deserted than ever. They took the lift going down. Level 2, Department of Magical Law Enforcement, including the improper use of magic office or headquarters and Witzegamont Administration Services, the female voice announced as they walked to the room appointed. Not all the court was present, only the most eminent. Harry knew it was just a formality. They had to give semblance to abide by the law. A stout witch in a corner, dressed in a cloak of emerald green, was ready to record every word. They interrogated him on what happened that day, and he, trying to detach as much as possible and using as few words as he could, explained. It was indeed hard, but he didn't want to betray any emotion in front of them. So he kept his face straight and answered the question posed. Yes, it had been an accident. No, he didn't want to hurt her. The healer said it was a stunning spell. No, it was too low to hit me. I'm not going to answer to this question. It's not relevant. As they tried to know again what the argument between him and Ron was. Jerks. And it was done. Not even 20 minutes. Ron would be released the 2nd of January. He shook hands and said goodbyes as they were leaving, had to listen again to words of condolence and try to avoid being engaged in conversations. Hermione, in the meanwhile, was crying in relief. When he got to her, she was the only person left in the room. She thanked him between tears. He encircled her. He encircled her shoulders with his arm consolingly, and they walked together to the fireplace. I'm going to go to pick him up on the 2nd, he told Hermione before leaving. I must speak to him. I want him to know that I didn't do it for him, and it's gonna be the last time I see him. She nodded. Try not to be too hard on him. You have no idea how he feels about it. He's full of remorse. You know, he loved Lily too. Harry felt a pang of annoyance. How he feels about it? But he didn't want to start an argument, so he kept it for himself and let it go. How's Hugo? He asked, remembering her letter. Harry is pitiful to see. He doesn't cry. He's just so desolate. He breaks my heart. And she sobbed again, with more force. I feel my family shattering. How am I going to put the pieces together? He sighed, with a heavy heart. Welcome to the club, he answered. How much sadness can a person bear in a day? I think I'm done, and it's not even 1 o'clock. When he got home, he went straight to bed to be relieved of his consciousness for a while. After some hours of deep sleep, he was, however, suddenly awakened by noises that sounded very much like explosions, accompanied by green and red lights. His heart started to pound like mad. Thinking about an ambush of some kind, he was about to dash from his bed looking for his wand when Ginny, who was lying close to him, grabbed him by the shoulder. Harry, everything is okay. They're just fireworks. It's midnight, and it's New Year's. It took him a few seconds to understand what she was saying, still not properly awake. He had completely lost count of the days. But then, he let himself fall on the bed, his heart still trying to jump out from his chest. Ginny started to laugh softly, and when, after a moment, his heart returned to behave normally, he laughed with her. But it seemed wrong and out of place. They stopped and looked at each other, sadness enveloping them again. He caressed her with tenderness. Happy New Year, she whispered, her face illuminated by gold and red lights coming from the window. What's going to be happy about it? He whispered back. She got close to him. I've got you. You have got me. We must try to make it so. We must start now, she said, pressing her body against him, her hands traveling on his back, and she kissed him with urgency, intensely, and despairingly. Do you think we'll be able to? She asked, always whispering, almost panting, not really distancing her lips from his own, so that they would brush, tantalizing. Her eyes were wet, however, and Harry understood even too well the wish to drown those dark, painful feelings into another human being. The wish to disappear into somebody else. He had experienced it already so many years before. And without answering, his heart oppressed, he kissed her back like if his life depended on it. Outside, fireworks after firework were exploding. but they were oblivious of it. In that instant, there were only him and her, united in their need of escaping a grief bigger than them. They held onto each other desperately, not to fall in the abyss that was opening under their feet, threatening to swallow them completely. And under those colorful lights, they allowed one another to forget, for a while, about everything but the necessity of loving each other. And that was the end of chapter 21. Hello, Marco. Hi, you made it. Right at the end, but you made it. So, yeah, that was all. A pretty sweet end. Bittersweet, like we said, but sweet at the same time. I hope you like it. And yeah, as I said, it was very short tonight, two very short chapters. So yeah, I know. And already, yes. I always do three chapters, but I just I don't know, when I write, I don't really think about the length of the chapters. So some of them are super super long, and some other are super super short. And yeah, we got two very short ones. So yeah, for tonight, I think that's all. Yeah, I could read another one, but I don't really want to. I prefer to keep like three, 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 and three, so it's easier for me to handle them. So yeah, it's finished. And by the way, I didn't say this in the Italian version, but the next week is gonna be the last one I'm gonna do, because after then August starts, and in Italy August is the month for holidays, so everybody is going away, me included. So yeah, last week is gonna be the last week. I'm gonna do Tuesday in Italian and Thursday in English, and then we will have a gap of a month, and I'm gonna start in September. I guess I checked the calendar. Let me check it again, but I guess I'm gonna start again probably the 6th of September for the Italian one, and the 8th of September for the English one, which are Tuesday and Thursday. So, yeah, that was all for tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you will be here next week too. And I wish you a good night. Mhm. Good night, Irene. Thank you to have been here. And thank you too, Marco. See you next week, I hope. Bye bye.